Good morning and a very warm welcome to Tomorrow.City. Today we're thrilled to be presenting a new focus session in which we will address key questions to respond to issues that matter for citizens and experts committed to a more sustainable urban future. How can cities lower their carbon footprint? How can smart buildings and infrastructures lead us towards more sustainable cities? Can we achieve greater water and waste management efficiency? Before we begin, let's welcome the Smart City Expo World Congress Director, Mr. Ugo Valenti. Good morning, Valenti. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
The launch of Tomorrow.City platform has been a tremendous success. So I wanted to ask you, what does Tomorrow.City mean for the smart cities community?
So we have been really and honestly humbled and surprised by the success. Right now, we have over 20,000 registered users for the audience, and most of them is consuming content weekly or even daily. So we are really, it's awesome for us. We're very happy about that. And for us, the most important thing is that we all together are creating a better future via creating better cities for the world. So we are very happy about that.
That's amazing. As we mentioned, the platform's launch and first event has been a big hit. So, and there's much more to come yet. What can we expect in today's event and on the platform as Tomorrow.City?
So I really believe that today's event is going to be our best yet. We're gonna, yeah, that's pretty good. So we're gonna discuss about how can we reach zero carbon cities, and we're talking about our present and our future here. So this is really important and interesting. We also see some of our coolest and smarter infrastructures in the world. And also we're going to have a wonderful debate about tactical urbanism. Is it hype or is it real? And if it's real, I believe it's a pretty inexpensive way of improving our cities. And we have been able to do that via the help and the collaboration of our wonderful partners at C40 Cities, at Huawei, the city of Shanghai, at Porta Barcelona. So we're very happy, and I really hope that you guys enjoy this experience today.
Well, as we know, you are the director, Smart City Expo World Congress, a historic event that is expected to meet its 10th edition on next November. So what can you advance on this edition and why it will be so special and unique?
Well, this edition, it's very special for us. It's the 10th edition. I remember when we started in 2011, so it's been a long and wonderful run. So this year's event, the Smart City Expo World Congress and the Smart Mobility Congress, will be held physically, finally, after 2 years, this November. And it's going to be very special because, of course, we will gather the biggest experts in the ecosystem, but we will be able to finally come over together and to meet each other and to network and to learn from each other. And that's very cool. Of course, we will have a showcase of the best solutions and products and the latest innovations on the urban ecosystem. And for those that cannot come over to Barcelona on 16 November, for sure, what we will do is, via this wonderful digital platform, Tomorrow.City, we will launch a whole set of digital content so that they can consume it online. So we're very excited about this.
We are deeply excited. Thank you very much, Mr. Valenti.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to it. Really interesting.
Thank you.
We'll share the views of the experts on the subject too, especially today. And I would especially like to thank our community of Tomorrow.City. Today we are expecting an international public who are very aware of the need to make cities greener and more resilient, and widely recommend you follow the entire session until 4:50 p.m. in the afternoon. The title of today's session is Data Changes Everything. Smarter infrastructure rules our world. And it's no coincidence, because behind this highly technical concept lies the aspirations of cities to become part of the solution and to discard and leave behind their role as highly polluting agents. New energetic models, improved transport infrastructure, an innovative digitalization of urban services, zero-emission construction, and higher efficiency in waste, water, and energy are some of the steps leading the way towards achieving net zero carbon cities. Today, we have an outstanding lineup of content. We have asked our speakers to touch upon practical examples on how climate neutrality is being advanced while generating prosperity, sustainable logistics, and technologically innovative urban services for citizens. Hopefully, they'll help us bring some clarity on how to achieve these objectives. Let me share the structure of today's event. We will start with an expert panel who will address smart infrastructures. Following the expert panel, we will connect directly with our colleagues from Huawei to talk about accelerating cities' digital transformation with technologies. Right after that, we will launch the first site event hosted by Smart Ports, Peers of the Future, Barcelona Zero Carbon. And following the side event, we will engage in a vigorous debate about tactical urbanism. Immediately after the debate, at 3 p.m., we will have the second expert panel focused on efficient and agile management for resilient cities and within budget. After that, there will be the last side event hosted by Bright Cities called Solutions Made in South America to Challenges in Global Cities. But before we start, I would like to share the range of options that the audience has for interacting with us here today. At the bottom of your screens, you will see that there's a space where some interactive polls will appear, and where we encourage you to submit questions for our speakers. You can also interact with our colleagues by using the chat on the right of the screen. To begin with, I would like to ask the audience a quick question to get the poll up and running. Can cities and urban infrastructure reach net zero emissions in the next 30 years? Option A, yes, it can become a realistic goal. Option B, no, it's a utopic idea. So please vote your opinions. And now, who better to talk to us about smart infrastructures? I now have the pleasure to introduce our first panel experts, Mr. Carles Rua, Head of Innovation of Port of Barcelona, Ms. Frankie Downey, Program Manager at Private Building Efficiency at C40 Cities, Mr. Thomas Xu, who is the President of Global Government Sales at Huawei Technologies, Mr. Sheng Shuifeng, President at Shanghai Smart City Development Institute, and Ms. Hu Min, Executive Director at the Innovative Green Development Program. Hello, Mr. Carles Rua.
Hello.
Welcome aboard. Thanks for joining. Thanks for coming. It is a pleasure to have you here. Also, it is a pleasure to say hello to Ms. Frankie Downey, Mr. Thomas Xu, Ms. Hu Min, and Mr. Sheng Shuifeng, who are joining us via Zoom. Hello to everybody.
Hello.
I see you there at your homes. So now let's ask a few questions, and I wanted you. Sorry for this, we have a small technical issue here. To begin with, I would like our experts a quick question. Respond with a short sentence. So, what is the first step city governments should take towards drastically reducing infrastructure and buildings emissions? Mr. Rua, let's start with you, please.
I think that you need three elements. The first one is to know if the infrastructure is really needed or not, because the word for sustainability and the smartest of an infrastructure is to have an unused or underused infrastructure. The second one is to take into account that governors and politicians will be here for years, maybe 8, but the infrastructure will be here for tens of years, sometimes hundreds of years. No? So we have to suffer for generations and generations. And the third one is to think that the important is not the infrastructure, it's the content. I mean, nobody wants an airport. What people want is to travel from one place to another. Nobody wants a cinema or a theater. What people want is to see a film or to see a play. So the importance is the content, not the continent. If you have three ideas in mind and you have the right answers, then the infrastructure will be smart, absolutely sure.
I want to hear what Miss Frankie Downey has to say about this.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I think what we've seen from cities is that setting an ambitious target for decarbonisation in buildings and putting resource, so staff, money and time behind achieving that is a huge catalyst for driving action and something they should be looking at doing first.
So we move a continent now. Mr. Sheng Shuifeng, please tell us your opinion.
Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you here. And I think the most important thing here and now for zero carbon is digitalization. I think digitalization will find us, will give us a very good way, a best way to get the balance between the people's requirement and the zero carbon target.
And finally, Ms. Hu Min, what is your opinion?
Thank you for having me for this panel. I think the first step is to measure, to understand the status now, and then to develop a blueprint for toward the zero carbon emission goal of the city. It's similar to what just Ms. Frankie Dunn has mentioned. I think a plan, a really bankable and implementable roadmap of policy actions, investment actions, and technology roadmap toward the carbon neutrality goal.
So it's interesting for you to agree. I like that. Thank you very much for your opinions. You have been optimistic and assertive too. But before we get into the experts' presentations, let me share the results from our first poll with you. And as you see, option A is the most voted option. Yes, it can become a realistic goal. So our audience is optimistic too, and we really like that. Thank you for your participation, and we encourage you to share your opinions in the chat and to like your favorite questions at the Q&A section. Remember that the more likes a question receives, the greater the chance is that it will be put to the panel. Now, beyond this quick reaction, let's delve deeper into the real issues at hand. Mr. Carlos Rua, can you explain to us how a frenetic activity like a port can be so innovative and also reduce the environmental impact? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jamie. The port itself is one of the biggest infrastructure in the Mediterranean. Okay, but if you consider the surrounding areas with an intercontinental airport with two or three intermodal terminals like Morrot and Cantunis, the logistic activity zone, and so on, we have the biggest concentration of logistic activities in all the Med. That's true.
The Med is the Mediterranean.
Yeah, the Mediterranean. yeah. The question is, and what I would like to explain is why we need this concentration of logistic activities, because sometimes you see only as a pollutant group of elements that are disturbing the people and the citizens of Barcelona and so on. But the reality is that it's stated in our mission. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, in January, we approved our forest strategic plan. And our mission as a port, and I think it can be generalized to other infrastructures like us, is that we want to create prosperity for our hinterland, for our environment. And that means that we have to help the companies in our surrounding areas, importers, exporters, distributors, and so on, to import and export, to develop the international commerce. So that's our mission. People think that the mission of a port is to bring more cargo or to bring more passengers or to bring more vessels and so on, and that's not really true. What we want is to create prosperity in our hinterland, and that means to create added value. And how can we do that? Okay, our strategy focus in 3 big elements. The first one is sustainability. You cannot create prosperity if you are not sustainable, because you can create prosperity now, but the next generation will be not prosper in that way. The second element is to create added value. Without added value, there is no prosperity in the society. And the third element is to create jobs, because if not, there is no prosperity. So our strategic lines focus in these 3 elements. Sustainability, to be a more sustainable port, to create more jobs, and to create more added value for our hinterland.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rua. Barcelona Port is forging the path towards a more sustainable future. Thank you for sharing us this information. C40 is a global network of cities committed to addressing climate change. Ms. Downey, what everyone is wondering is in which cases and which cities are leading the way in taking near-term building decarbonization action? What lessons are being learned? Let's go to Ms. Downey online.
Thank you. Yeah, so as you say, bold action is needed to reduce emissions, and buildings are major consumers of energy in cities. And cities can really have a leadership role in particularly compared to national governments. They can be more nimble and take innovative action much faster. And they're doing this and taking that leading action in a number of ways. They're setting, as I mentioned, ambitious targets. So all C40 cities are working on or have developed a climate action plan to align to 1.5 degrees. And almost 33 C40 cities have committed to net zero carbon buildings to ensure new buildings operate a net zero carbon by 2030 and existing buildings by 2050. And we know that setting a target can not only send a market signal, but by overseeing a target and the policy development process behind that, cities can also address climate justice gaps, potential risks to vulnerable communities, and ensure equal distribution of benefits of building policies. Cities are also leading with their municipal buildings, because cities are often one of the largest building owners within a city, and as such have huge procurement and market power that can be used to great effect. Cities are also using publicly owned buildings as living labs and allowing the private sector to test or showcase new technologies and models in the municipal buildings that can help build capacity in local markets and inspire other building owners. And of course, this is saving taxpayer money too. I mean, Houston, who have achieved 100% renewable energy in their municipal assets, are saving $9 million a year on their electricity bills. Cities are also using data to create a transparent evidence base, because getting to net zero buildings is tough, and it can't be done without a really good understanding of the building stock in the city. So I probably don't need to tell anyone here, but data is really key for a city to deliver on their plans and their actions and to meet net zero. But it can be very difficult for a city to get the data that they need. So policies such as benchmarking and audits or collaborative partnerships with building owners can really help cities build this sort of baseline for energy consumption. And this can be done in not only the global north cities, but also global south cities. So Rio de Janeiro have a requirement for new buildings to report their energy data for 5 years once they become operational. Cities are also setting bold performance requirements for new and existing buildings. Where they can, we know that regulation is by far the most effective tool to drive action in cities. And Tokyo have been leading the way on this since 2010, but the last few years have seen a huge increase in the number of cities that are planning and passing similar performance standard type policies. I think finally, cities are also incentivizing and supporting stakeholders to meet required actions. They're looking at creatively at all the levers that they have in their toolbox to enable financing with repayments through utility or energy bills, looking at reducing transaction costs, using grants and incentives or tax reductions or expedited permits, thinking all of the ways if they aren't able to do things through regulation, but they know that they can't do this alone, and partnership and collaboration is really key. And creating partnerships not only with the business sector, what they traditionally might have engaged with, but also communities, residents, tradespeople, unions even, so that we can really drive this just transition. And in particular, cities are working more closely with local climate justice groups to ensure that they're not just consulting, but actually co-designing policy and giving a voice to those that have previously not had a voice in the political decision-making process. So yeah, cities are really at the forefront of tackling climate change at the pace and the scale that is needed.
Collaboration and data. Noted. Thank you very much, Ms. Downey. It's fascinating to see how C40 cities are taking bold climate action, leading the way towards a healthier and more sustainable future. Now I have the pleasure to introduce Mr. Sheng Shuifeng. The floor is yours.
Oh.
Yeah, we hear you.
It's very important. Okay, it's very important to talk about zero carbon and low emission in this time, and it's a very hot topic in Shanghai, you know. And in Shanghai, we have a lot of smart infrastructure buildings, and in this very big city, you can find we have a lot of IoT devices to monitor the cities and to help the government to find and to know at real time what is happening and what is emission right now. And I can share you with some details. In Shanghai, we have real-time monitoring more than 500 construction sites and more than 14,000 resident area, and like energy, like water, like the underground pipers. And also we have more than 9 million IoT terminals in Shanghai. So all the IoT devices and all the monitors in Shanghai will help us to find the best way to zero carbon. And in these cities, I have very good examples. It's an example about energy monitoring platform for public buildings. In Shanghai, we have a platform which is monitoring more than 19 million square meters, and will connect more than 2,000 buildings. And in these buildings, we can have the data about the energy consumption with real time. And if the buildings have energy consumption more than average level, and the government will help them to find another way, find a better way to lower the energy consumptions. So all things in China, in Shanghai, we have make it digitalization. So I mean, the digitalization in this time will be the most important for the cities, because we can find the way to zero emissions, to zero carbon with digitalizing method, and to help the cities to find solutions such as with smart building, with smart IoT, with smart water. So in Shanghai, we have linked almost everything to digitalizations, such as water, such as hydro, such as buildings. So with these things, we can find a low carbon city and a green city in the future.
Amazing work you're doing there in Shanghai. I'd love to go to Shanghai one day. Thank you very much, Mr. Sheng Shuifeng. Now, to wrap up this round of wonderful interventions, I have the pleasure to introduce Ms. Hu Min. What is your vision regarding greener urban innovation?
Thank you for the question. Thank you for having me again. I would like to answer your question to just starting with the what's happening in China right now. It seems this panel has a little bit focused on China specifically. So as our peer just mentioned, this now is the best time in China for cities to achieve their net zero emission goals, because after last year in September, our President Xi at the UN Assembly announced that China is going to achieve the carbon neutrality goal by 2060. After that, this climate movement and the net zero emission movement really becomes true in China. Not only the policymakers, but also the business field investment. Of course, the city mayors are really taking real actions toward this goal in long term. So this is really the best time for China to achieve toward the greener and low carbon city in future. So myself, with my team, we have been working on the low carbon city planning in the past decades, starting 2010 with many cities. And actually last year, we were engaged in developing China's largest city's 2050 zero emission goal roadmap, which is Chongqing with 30 million population. So I would talk about this based on my experience working with Chongqing colleagues there. So I think the first thing I want to say is China cities are a little bit different from other Western cities to my experience. There are two very distinct differences. One is Chinese cities are still growing. The urbanization rate is still growing. There are more people moving to cities rather than we are actually only working on the stock emission. We have to tackle the growth of the emission too. So there are new buildings being built every day. It's not only retrofitting buildings. And then secondly, the difference is China's cities is not only buildings and transportation, but also a huge part of industry accounts for the city's emission. So when we are talking about city low carbon actions, zero emission actions, or even any innovation actions, it should be an all-round comprehensive plan rather than only buildings or transportations. Of course, we need to take, these two sectors are very important, but in China, industry are still the primary source of emission, even in the cities. So that's very important to know. And secondly, not about innovation, but several policy progress that's happening in China in different sectors in the cities. I think, firstly, industry, I want to start with that, even though it's not very popular for Western cities. Industry energy efficiency is the single most important policy to me to achieve China's net zero emission goal, even in cities. So basically trying to improve the industry manufacturing energy efficiency is still a huge gap between China and the advanced countries like Germany and Japan. On that, we need to do a lot. And secondly, we need to close down the inefficient manufacturers. And there are still a lot, even some of them are over capacity, need to close. And this is on industry. And secondly, on buildings, still there's a stock and growth problem. For the existing buildings, a huge amount of Chinese buildings are not good quality. It's not only low efficiency, it's not good quality. A lot of retrofitting demand are there, and the government has invested in this field a lot as part of the efforts to improve the living standards of the citizens. And for the new buildings, we just need to actually apply the most stringent standard building codes, like world-class building codes to the new buildings, which we are not doing it yet. But that's very important to start as soon as possible. And on China already are developing, of course, we have green building codes similar to the US and Europe. And China is right now developing the zero emission building codes, which is voluntary, not mandatory, we have a voluntary super low emission passive building codes. That's also quite important. On transportation, I think you have heard a lot about China's EV story. That's very promising. Now we're the largest EV market of the world, largest consumer producer. It's all very exciting, and China is going to probably achieve 50% of the new car will be EV in around 15 years. So that all of this are very ambitious goals, and whether this will lead to the net zero goals, it's we need to measure it, and it's very hard to say yet, but there's very exciting progress going on. So the last thing I want to say, answering your question about innovation, I just want to say the smart city concept is important because ICT technology, data technology is important in many ways. Firstly, measure. We need to measure emissions and measure the level of energy efficiency, all levels and all the in the buildings, industry, transportation. It's very important. And secondly, data technology helps to improve energy efficiency by integrating the whole system, like energy supply system and demand side measurement. And the third thing is data is important to basically reduce the demand of service by better dispatching with the data technology, smart technology. For example, we don't have to have two cars to improve the double of mobility level, because you can drive more or you can have a better car. But that means in order to have the same level of mobility as the more developed countries like the US or Europe, China does not to have a per capita car ownership as high as in the US. That means that means a lot lower carbon emission in future. So I would say smart city, the data technology will be the innovation area we would like to see adding to all this existing low carbon actions and policies that China is pursuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambitious goals, you said, and that's why we are here in Tomorrow Live, to share the experience, and we have to focus on these ambitious goals. Thank you so much for your very interesting interventions. Now, let us take a closer look at some of the questions we've dealt with. I am sure that many of the experts who are following us are wondering how you can move from a theoretical level to the implementation of practical projects. Also, remember that you can add your questions in the Q&A box in the platform to ask to our expert panelists. Mr. Carles Rua, let me start with you. The Port of Barcelona is playing a relevant part in ensuring a high connection between Barcelona and the rest of the world, but also higher connectivity within the city. What projects is the port planning to continue being this strategic focal point?
Okay, we have many projects. I will focus on a few of them. The first one is in order to provide a better sustainability in our environment, we are planning a development of OPS, that means onshore power supply for vessels. That means the electrical connection of the vessels to the wharf. That means that the vessel will not need to have their engines working while they are in port. This is a big project that means more than 90 million euros of expenses in the next few years, and it will help us a lot in the development of a more sustainable port. No? We are also working in energy production, as an example, with solar panels in all our covers and so on, and also with a better use of the energy. In terms of connectivity, the Port of Barcelona is one of the best connected ports in the Mediterranean, no? And what we want is to become not only a transport hub, that is more or less what we are now, to become also a logistic hub. The idea is that we are not only moving things through the port, that we will add some or create some added value to the activity developed in the port. We want logistic activity, not only transport activity. And that means that we are trying to get some logistic partners, some logistic companies to the port of Barcelona. For example, yesterday we approved in our board of directors a joint venture with the port of Busan in order to create a warehouse, a new company to manage a warehouse for Korean products here in Barcelona. Okay, this is an example of bringing some logistic activity and not only transport activity to our surrounding areas. In terms of job creation, that is other of our focus, one of the things we are planning is to create a new technological district focused on the blue economy in the Port Bay area, in the old quarter of the port. In order to become more technological and to create high-level and technological level jobs and startups and spin-offs from the university and so on. Only to give you some slides of what we are trying to do.
Well, it's not light. Fascinating stuff indeed. Now I would like to ask Frankie Downey. At C40, you promote and witness the most innovative decarbonization efforts and solutions in cities. Could you share 2 remarkable success stories that the world needs to hear about?
Yeah, sure. And I should add, I work on buildings. So these are buildings focused, but obviously C40, there's a huge range of innovative actions that cities are taking across lots of different sectors. But first of all, I wanted to share an example from New York, mainly for the ambition and the scale, although we've got Chinese cities on here, and I think the scale of most cities in the world doesn't compare to anything in Chinese cities. But for the rest of the world, New York have over 1 million buildings, and for a number of years, they've had a range of policies to reduce emissions. But back in 2016, they got together with industry to form a building technical working group that analysed all of that benchmarking, audit, and other data that they had, and did a really detailed assessment with industry, with building owners, to understand the building typologies and the measures that were needed. At that point, their goal was to get to an 80% reduction by 2050, which has since been amended to net zero carbon. And that has really underpinned a lot of their planning. And it meant that in 2019, they were able to pass a building emission performance standard. And that is placing a carbon cap on buildings over 25,000 square feet. And that cap applies to about 50,000 buildings in the city. So the cap will start in 2024 and will gradually tighten and reduce down to net zero emissions by 2050. And there are serious sort of financial penalties if these targets aren't met. So it's a really bold action. And now it's one that's being replicated across cities in North America in particular, but also around the globe. And I think that's its ambition and the scale and the speed at which they're taking action is really impressive. Secondly, I thought I'd highlight Oslo. So a much smaller city, but one that's taking quite an innovative approach. They were the first city to set annual climate budgets for greenhouse gas emissions in a very similar way to how they set their financial budgets. So the responsibility for this climate budget sits with the Department of Finance and the City Council for Environment and Transport. And the climate budgets are integrated into regular budgetary process. So there's a CO2 limit and greenhouse gas limit on the activities of different sectors. And that integration is really key. You know, it's so much so that a recent webinar that C40 had featured the head of the burial service, so graveyards, which is an odd thing to have on a webinar perhaps, but it really demonstrates how integrated this is into the services of the city. So a really good example of how cities are mainstreaming greenhouse gas reductions and climate emissions.
Bold actions indeed, and we really love the word ambition. Question to Mr. Thomas Xu. How can connectivity help to improve the energy efficiency of buildings?
Thank you very much for having me answering this question. Actually, I would like to answer this question from another aspect, because actually to ensure the connectivity, you will need the ICT infrastructure also to be lower energy consumption. So as the digital world rapidly develops, the energy consumption of ICT infrastructure is becoming an increasingly prominent issue. According to the forecasts, the energy consumption of global data centers will reach about 950 billion kilowatt hour by 2025, about 3% of the total global electricity consumption. The energy consumption of global base station sites will reach about 660 billion kilowatt hour by 2025, so around 2% of the total global electricity consumption. So together, it will cost 5% of the total global electricity consumption. So it has become a common challenge for service providers and device providers to reduce energy consumption and build green, efficient, and even zero carbon ICT infrastructure. So this reflects not only the needs of enterprise operations, but also a major social responsibility. Top carriers in the world have proposed the zero carbon network strategy. They intend to deploy photovoltaic modules in typical ICT scenarios, such as base station sites, equipment rooms, and data centers on a large scale, as an attempt to reduce and neutralize carbon emissions through green electricity. So in Greece, carriers deploy PV modules at sites, and as a result, the usage of mains or the commercial electricity is reduced by about 40%, saving 14,500 kilowatt hour per year and protecting the island environment at the same time. In Pakistan, thanks to PV and AI technologies, the diesel generator runtime is reduced to less than 10%, so cutting the OPEX by 81%. As an ICT infrastructure provider, Huawei is committed to building efficient and intelligent green ICT infrastructure solutions to promote zero carbon networks and data centers. So Huawei has partnered with network service operators and cloud service operators in realizing carbon neutrality faster. Huawei's digital energy target network includes 5 solutions: simplified sites, simplified equipment room, simplified data center, green power for all, and intelligent power cloud. We will come at consumption reduction and efficiency improvement from 3 angles: simplified, green, and intelligent. First, the construction of simplified sites, equipment rooms, and data centers improves energy efficiency and reduces energy waste. Second, the PV modules are deployed at sites, equipment rooms, and campuses to generating green energy instead of only consuming it, making green electricity available everywhere. Third, the energy infrastructure is a digital and intelligent network. The smart energy cloud improves energy efficiency and operation and maintenance efficiency, and reduces energy consumption and O&M costs. So thank you very much.
Fascinating stuff, Mr. Xu. I have a question now to Mr. Sheng Shuifeng. At the Shanghai Smart City Development Research Institute, you carry out relevant cooperation and exchanges in the field of smart city construction. Can you share a specific example of one of those collaborations and how smart constructions will be able to lower city emissions? We cannot hear you, Mr. Shuifeng.
Yeah, I'm mute.
We can hear you now, yes.
Okay, now. Yes, and there are lots of examples about how to lower carbon emissions, and we have a lot of smart solutions in cities, and help the government to make a better and clean city. But in this example, I think one example is very important, and this example is about energy platform. I mentioned it right now, and in Shanghai, this energy platform is to measure the buildings' energy consumptions. So the platform now is connected to more than 2,000 buildings, very big buildings in Shanghai, and to monitor the real-time energy consumptions. You know, in Shanghai, all the big very big buildings will be monitored with this platform, and if your energy consumption is above the average level, you will be asked to make some changes to lower your energy consumptions. So some companies and will do this smart solutions for the buildings, and the online monitoring coverage is now about 19%. It's a very high level. So in these examples, we can find the smart technologies, the digitalization method is widely used to the buildings and to find a better way to monitor the building's energy consumptions. And in this technology, I think the most important is data technology and IoT technology. So if you can find, if you can see the data platform of this energy monitoring, you will find all the buildings data will be displayed in this very big screens, and which buildings is above the average level, and which building is is below the average levels. So with this platform, Shanghai is doing more and more low carbon and zero carbon buildings in Shanghai. And I think in the future, maybe 10 years, more and more low carbon and zero carbon buildings will built in Shanghai, and the smart city will be strongly supported by this platform. And I think this is a very good example. Thank you.
We're really looking forward to it. Lastly, I have a question for Ms. Hu Min. The capacity of a country like China has dazzled the world with its rapid urban transformation. Cities have been built in a few years that have changed the productive landscape of the Asian continent. From your knowledge and experience, what innovative breakthroughs and policies regarding urban decarbonization will change buildings and cities in the near future?
Thank you for this great question. I think now because China still have opportunity for the future change of the urbanization, what I would like to see is a smarter urban design. It's not in the sense of I think the smart urban design in the context of a lower carbon emission, which means, for example, in China, there are a lot of industry waste heat that can be used to heat the housing, and that will be able to reduce a lot of emission. However, if the residential compound is too far from the industry region, even building the pipelines will be just impossible. So if some of the urbanization design could have a little bit more mixed use of the region or the area, that will enable this integration of energy supply and energy consumption. And secondly, also it's also another example for this is like in Qinghai province of China, some of the residential buildings, they can actually use RE directly, renewable energy driven heating or cooling system, which is the renewable energy that generated but cannot be integrated into the bigger grid system, power system. All this actually need to have a better urban design to make it possible. And the other thing for this urbanization breakthrough, we talk about the energy consumption, the surging energy consumption we have to look at because of the ICT technology, the data centers. But if we build we all know over half of the energy consumption from data centers are for basically cooling the equipments. If we could have a better design and location when we select this data for these data centers to be closer to like a cooler areas, or even somehow people are talking about putting it in the caves or in a wasted mine wells. That will be some innovation or breakthrough that we could help reduce the energy consumption need for the future ICT technology. I think of not mentioning the other ideas that we always talk about that we need to learn from Barcelona, for example, for the walkability of the cities, the mix of the neighborhood, mixed use of neighborhood. All of this, I think, is fundamentally important for long-term carbon emission reduction in China, because now the building and transportation energy demand is still not the primary source. So when we're looking at the mitigation reduction action, sometimes if you change the urbanization design, it doesn't really give you short-term carbon savings. But in long term, if we don't do it right, we will lock into a high carbon lifestyle that is very unfortunate, because we do have opportunity to do that now, because we are still building a lot of cities in China. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your interventions. Well, I'd like to thank you once again to all the panelists here and also our amazing audience. Thank you for your participation. To wrap up this expert panel, thanks again to all of you, Carlos Rua, all four of you that are there at your home, to our audience too. And for our audience, stay tuned, because in a few minutes we'll be interviewing our partners at Huawei, where we'll be discussing about accelerating cities' digital transformation with technologies.
About leveraging data to create customer value.
The winner is Adaptations to the Future of Work in Zambia by Workit from New York. Shanghai, China.
Thank you. Thank you very much. about leveraging data to create customer value.
The winner is Adaptations to the Future of Work in Zambia by Workits from New York. Shanghai, China.
Thank you very much.
About leveraging data to create customer value.
The winner is Adaptations to the Future of Work in Zambia by Workits from New York. Shanghai, China.
Thank you very much.
About leveraging data to create customer value.
The winner is Adaptations to the Future of Work in Zambia by Workits from New York. Shanghai, China.
Thank you very much.
about leveraging data to create customer value.
The winner is Adaptations to the Future of Work in Zambia by Workits from New York. Shanghai, China.
Thank you very much.